Jambalaya Risotto.
I'm Chef Champion. Let's bring cooking back the way it used to be. Welcome to the new age of culinary learning.
I'm gonna show you guys how to make that jambalaya risotto. Now in Louisiana, jambalaya is probably the most staplest ingredient out of all, but no one's ever heard of it in the Italian version. So I'm gonna show you guys how to make risotto first and then infuse that with all the fixings from the jambalaya. The first thing we're gonna wanna add is your risotto. And this is about a cup, or should I say arborio rice. All right, now that we have our arborio rice in there, we're just gonna turn our stove on probably about a medium low. We don't want it too high. So I'm gonna add in just a little bit of this healthy Bellavato avocado oil, just a little bit. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to coat the grains of the rice to keep them from sticking. So I'm just gonna give that a nice little mix. Now I'm not really cooking them, I'm just kind of toasting them just a little bit. That looks like that's got a nice little mix. So now is the time to go ahead and turn it up on high. Now here's a trick too as well. What you want to do is get you a pot, and I'm using probably about 5 to 6 quarts of chicken stock, and that's what you're gonna add. Traditional rice, you would add in the rice, you would cover it, 20 minutes later, oh, you're all good. This isn't the case. You actually gotta keep adding about a half a cup of this chicken stock at a time. Now once you add that in, you're just gonna give it a little bit of a stir, and you're gonna let that cook until all the liquid actually absorbs. You want the rice to be nice and thirsty, and you're gonna keep on repeating that process, probably about 2 to 3 times until the rice is done. All right, so now is a finishing technique, and most risottos won't do this, but when I was in college, I always learned a little bit of heavy whipping cream on your risotto at the end. It's really gonna make it nice and creamy. So now, as you guys can see, that cream is just bonding very nicely with the rice. So very important too, what you want to do is take this risotto and add it on a plate and spread it out. And what this is gonna do is gonna help stop the cooking process. A lot of times what people do too as well, just like rice, when you cook rice, you leave it on the stove, you turn it off, you think it's done, but what happens, it keeps cooking. They call that carryover cooking. Say it with me, world.
Carryover cooking.
Thank you. So the first thing I wanna do is just add in a little bit of this oil to that. A little bit of this avocado oil. Just a little bit, just so my sausage fries up nicely. And then for presentation, we're just gonna cut these into really small slices. Because with risotto, you don't want a lot of big chunks. You want the chunks nice and small. So we're just gonna slice those. For those of you guys that don't know knife skills, 3 fingers tucked underneath the handle, index fingers on the blade, and your thumbs on the blade. In my left hand, I have the claw. My motion is always a rocking motion. So I'm gonna split that down the middle. And I'm just gonna make small, diced andouille sausage. What really makes it authentic is what they call the Trinity mix, and which is the bell pepper and the onion. And you just want to make sure whenever you're making an authentic Cajun dish, you get those in there. And whenever I'm cooking anything, I always like to start off with what takes the longest. So obviously the sausage is going to take a little bit longer to cook, and then the peppers, and then the onion, and then we'll finish with fresh garlic and a little bit of tomato. We're gonna add that to our mixture. All right, so now we're adding in our red onions. So we got our andouille sausage, we got our red and green bell peppers, and now we have our sweet red onions. Give that a nice little mix. As you can see, it's just beautiful, beautiful color. A lot of times when they make jambalaya down south, they put it all in the same pot and then they bake it in the oven for 45 minutes. You lose all this beautiful presentation and your vegetables are no longer al dente, which you want that. So now we'll add in a little bit of fresh garlic. Remember, always adding garlic last. Give that a nice little mix. And this is gonna cook probably for about another minute. Like I said, you don't wanna overcook this. You want it to still have a little bit of a crunch to it. So now what I did with my risotto is I added it back into the skillet. And one little quick technique, like I said, before we made it, we added a little bit of cream, but right before I add in the rest of the jambalaya ingredients, I'm gonna add in just a little bit more cream, because I like my risotto nice and creamy. Now you can definitely add a little bit of cheese in here for you Wisconsinites. I know you guys wanna put some cheese in there. By all means, knock yourself out, but we're gonna leave it the way it is. So now, like I said, because I made all my ingredients separate, as you can see, it's got a lot of nice, vibrant colors. We're gonna go ahead and add all that right to our risotto. I can guarantee you they don't make risotto like this in Italy. And we're just gonna mix that up. And I don't have my temperature on high, I just got it kind of on low. I'm just trying to keep it warm. And you can definitely make this risotto ahead of time too as well. Just remember when you reheat it in a skillet and just add a little bit more cream just to wake it up. So now the last little thing we're gonna add is a little bit of fresh tomato, and we don't wanna cook it. I'm not a fan of that little pulp in there, so I'm just gonna take that pulp right out. And then we're just gonna dice this up. Because you don't wanna cook the tomatoes, you definitely want the tomatoes to have its natural flavor. Add this last one to it. All right, so now that that's all mixed up good, remember what I told you guys last episode, presentation is everything. People eat with their eyes. I know you worked all day, I know you planned this meal, and the last thing you want to do is spend all this time prepping it up. But I guarantee you, if you give a good presentation, your guests will appreciate it even that much more. So what I have here is a little rice mold. Do you have to do this? No. If you don't have a rice mold, a large ice cream scooper works well. Or a ramekin upside down. Just make sure you line the ramekin or whatever you're using with a little bit of olive oil to keep it nice and slick. And by doing this mold too as well, it's gonna help and keep the rice nice and hot even longer because it's kind of steaming in its own bath. I'm gonna lift that up like so. And then for garnish, I have a little bit of mint. Always remember to garnish it. We're actually gonna stick that right in the middle, just like so. And then we're gonna take a couple of those frog legs and we're just gonna lay that on just like so. Oh yeah, your honey bunny is gonna love you. Just remember, if they don't like frog legs, don't tell them it's frog legs until they eat it. So there you have it, your jambalaya risotto with your Cajun frog legs.